Skyrish Nation, welcome to the show. I'm joined as always with my co-host Mike. Mike, we always try to start off with the best side of the football to go deep here in the game, and Notre Dame throttles NC State 36-7. So both sides have a claim to that. Notre Dame has 100% post-game win expectancy in this. We'll dive into the rest of the advanced stats, but suffice to say, they grade out very, very well for the offense and defense. Where should we start? What side of the football in this blowout win do you think played better that deserves the honors of the Irish Talk breakdown?
I'm going to start with the defense. I think overall, the defense seemed like the cleanest operation the entire night. And I think this is just an incredible development for our odds of continuing to win out, of making the playoff, of actually developing into a title contender. We mentioned the SP Plus ratings and rankings for Notre Dame. We mention them pretty much every week. But one thing we've been closely monitoring, even within that, is where we fare specifically on the defense. And a few weeks back, after we had dropped a couple games and the defense was looking pretty leaky, our defense was ranking around number 50. And now we've had a string of strong performances on defense. And now we've climbed up to 23. And I think last week we were around 29. So it's just a continued development that we're continuing to improve on that side of the ball. And the way we got it done was just if you look at through the advanced stats lens, we pretty much checked every single box in terms of the key categories. We had a 22% havoc rate. That's very high. We were extremely disruptive. We had 4 sacks. We had 4 interceptions. We had another tackle for loss. Just very, very disruptive. We were harassing them all game. And then perhaps even more impressive is that we limited them to a 29% success rate. That's one of the lower marks I can recall for the Notre Dame defense at any point in the last however many years. So if you have a high havoc rate and you're only allowing a 29% success rate, you're really not giving the defense or the opposing offense much to work with. And then on top of that, we didn't allow that much explosiveness. There were a couple plays. There's that 45-yard touchdown pass. There's a 26-yard catch, 2 20-plus yard catches to Hoffman. But other than that, there are no other passes over 15 yards and no runs over 10 yards. So it really they got Golden, the true freshman, on that double move, and that really was like the explosiveness for the game. Other than that, this kind of looked like the Notre Dame defenses of old. And I thought one area we particularly did really well was I thought our run defense, because Hollywood Smothers was a running back we were hearing all about, rightfully so, coming into this game. And I mean, we bottled him up very effectively. He
Dare I say we smothered Smothers?
I should have thought of that. Now I'm disappointed that I didn't think about that. But yeah, I mean, look, we held him to under 4 yards a carry. That's for a back of that level of talent. Very, very impressive. So look, I think there's a reason I picked the defense to start with. I think they're continuing to consistently put together strong performances and just in time, because we got a heck, as we'll get into more later, we have a heck of a challenge this next week with the number 1 offense coming into South Bend from USC.
Yeah, I want to double click on one of those stats, explosiveness. NC State had a sneaky high number of missed tackles in this game. Notre Dame's missed tackle rate was 16%. But I think the aggressive, swarming defense that didn't lead to a lot of yards after contact in the run game or a lot of yards after catch in the pass game. And where do we see that show up? Just one missed tackle for Hollywood Smothers, who, as we previewed with the Red and White podcast coming in, he's like Jeremiah Love-esque missed tackling machine. So in the run game, those missed tackles didn't show up. Their longest run was 10 yards. Like, yeah, they got a little bit in the passing game. Their longest run was 10 yards. I thought that was the biggest difference in this game that allowed us to make them one-dimensional and allowed us to kind of pin our ears back. We blitzed 45% of the time, a really high blitz rate. We only got pressure 35% of the time. Again, we always try to talk about that number being a 1-to-1 ratio. You want your blitz rate to be equal or smaller than your pressure rate. You want to be able to bring more pressures than just your blitzes. This is only the second time all year that pressure rate was lower than the blitz rate. but we had 4 sacks. Again, we talk a lot about sacks as a misleading stat. I think this is an example of it. I think CJ Bailey hung on to the ball a really long time. I thought a lot of the sacks he was taking were more Jack Cohn-esque than they were us generating a lot of pressure. But I go back to that. We made them one-dimensional because we bottled up Smothers. We didn't have to worry about Smothers breaking loose for 10, 15, 20-yard chunk plays. It just didn't happen. And you give a good Notre Dame defense a one-dimensional offense, we eat that up all day long. A lot of sacks, 3 interceptions. I think that started with the run defense. To me, that one stood out the most. Mike, if there is one element that still is leaky in this game, though, you mentioned the Dallas Golden getting beat on the double move. Certainly not the only time we got beat in nickel. And I know we'll get to this when we preview USC, but the number one offense in the country, powered by the number one slot receiver in the country, Malachi Lemon. Walk through what we saw in the slot in this game, how that grades out, and whether or not we think, gosh, like, is this just still the Achilles heel?
Yeah, look, I think it's improving, but I think it still is certainly the weakness of the team. Dallas Golden, 7 targets, gave up 5 catches, 98 yards. Carson Hobbs targeted twice, slipped once, gave up 26 yards. So clearly, when we don't have Devontae Smith in, it's shaky. So I think if we get Devontae Smith back, who's questionable for the USC game, if we get him back, I think we can assume a solid, reliable level of play, which I think is something that we would definitely need against Malachi Lemon. So it's very contingent on the health status of Smith. So other than that, like, look, these guys are getting better, but I wouldn't say that I feel comfortable with Golden or Hobbs, blanketing Lemon. I imagine, he'll make him have some freshmen or young defensive back moments for sure. So, but look, everything else is rounding into form. It's just this one spot that continues to be, like you said, Brett, it's the Achilles heel. But the good news is that there is a solution. And as I've said several times already, it's just, you got to hope that Devontae Smith is ready to go for USC.
Absolutely, Devontae Smith is a part of it. Came out today. We're recording this on Monday, October 13th. He's questionable for the game. He's been questionable the last couple of weeks, so we'll see if this is the time we get him back. I do think it's worth noting, though, that everything else in coverage is starting to click. We had 3 interceptions in this game, a 4th if the refs do their job. Leonard Moore was targeted twice and gave up a silly 5 yards. Christian Gray was targeted 6 times, allows just 1 catch for 11 yards. I thought the linebackers absolutely balled out in coverage. Drake Bone on a big 3rd down pass breakup. Bowen, Viliamuasa, Osbury, and Sneed collectively had 52 snaps in coverage. They were targeted just 5 of those 52 routes. Yes, they allowed 4 catches, so 4 out of 5, but for just 22 yards, just about 4 or 5 yards a catch. And really, all of that came on 1 completion against Jalen Sneed. The other 3 went for short yardage gain. So I thought overall, very efficient game from our linebackers. So where I go with that is, you got Gray and Moore locking down the outside. You have the linebackers doing very well against tight ends and running backs. Tight ends this year in particular, a big part of Lincoln Riley's pass attack. I think that's going to let us be able to zero in on, sending extra support, sending that safety help, keeping Malachi Lemon in double coverage. And again, I don't want to overly preview the USC game on this show, but I think this NC State game is pointing in a lot of the right directions for a lot of the rest of the coverage in our pass defense to let us scheme around Malachi Lemon. I had one other thing on defense, Mike, just stepping back to what you were talking about on SP Plus moving up. We talk about that so much because it's so predictive of truly how good is a team game by game. And so there's a few things. We've put up some really compelling numbers in the last 3-4 games. Arkansas scored 28 points below their season average against us. Boise State scored 32 points below their season average. NC State scored 27 points below their season average. These are 3 pretty decent teams in Arkansas, Boise State, and NC State because their offenses are pretty darn good. Their defenses, not so much, but all three of those teams have pretty darn good offenses. I'm not saying they're USC. I'm not saying they're Miami. I'm not saying they're Joe Burrow and LSU from whenever that was 2019, but they're pretty good offenses, and they significantly underperformed versus their average, versus their expectations of play. That will move you up the rankings in the efficiency play-by-play data. I think the other element is some of our bad data points are looking better and better and better. Miami is the sixth best offense in SP plus. They are projected to score 39 points against an average defense, and we held them to 27 despite not a lot of help from our offense, despite some turnovers and short field position. Texas A&M has moved all the way up to 11th in SP plus and caught us in a shootout, right? So yeah, that's not ideal that we're giving up 41 points to Texas A&M, but I think that's starting to age better that Texas A&M is an elite offense, a top 15 offense. And I think that Miami one in particular, like there's not a lot of teams this year are going to hold Miami to less than 27 points. That might be maybe their second. I think that tied with their win over Florida, like their second lowest point outage so far. I don't see a lot of defenses the rest of the way bottling up Miami to a low scoring game. So those data points start to age better. That will move you up in efficiency metrics that kind of will go back and regrade that data. They'll regrade every single one of those plays as the opponents look stronger. So I think all of those things here coming together bodes well for Marcus Freeman's team, bodes well for the defense. And again, I don't know if we're ready to say this yet, but Chris Ash deserves a lot of credit here for this defense rounding into form here halfway through the season.
Just a reminder, you don't want to overreact to a very limited sample size. Certainly,
totally.
The first two games very frustrating, right? We can look back on a number of things that could have just gone slightly differently, and we're undefeated right now. So it's very frustrating for sure, but at the same time, I don't think that doesn't necessarily give a whole like a wholesome view of who Chris Ash is as a defensive coordinator and what his potential level of success is going to be. Freeman is someone who we have a lot of confidence in as a head coach, and particularly his hiring acumen. And so I think when Ash and the defense were struggling a little bit early, there's an element where I'm like, okay, like, well, Freeman saw something that he liked in this guy. He saw something where he thought Ash was going to mesh with the rest of the team. So let's give it a little bit more time. And then also when you consider all the turnover that we had on the roster on the defensive side of the ball, again, not that surprising that there were some bumps in the road. The only other thing I'm going to call out, Brett, is we mentioned that the pressure rate relative to how much we blitzed more than pressure we got, right? So it's not like we were, had an absolutely stellar pass rushing game from that standpoint. But I will call out that when we did get the pressure, it was very effective. There was a dramatic drop off on Bailey when he was pressured, and as you mentioned, Brett, some of that was like him holding onto the ball, right? But he was completely ineffective. From a clean pocket, he actually graded out pretty well when he was under pressure, which was nearly a third of his dropbacks. Dropped to like a very low failing grade, a 37.5% completion percentage. So the pressure was effective when it was getting there. But overall, look, I think as you mentioned, some of these old data points aging better. I think there's a lot to feel good about with the defense. We just got to figure out that nickel spot. If we can get Devontae Smith back, or these freshmen eventually, or I guess Hobbs isn't a freshman, but if these young players can continue to improve, that's the one area that if we figure out, that I feel like we really don't have any holes on the defensive side of the ball.
Completely agree. Moving over to the offense, I think we've got to continue to start with CJ Carr. I saw a tweet that was showing his over-the-shoulder pass to Eli Raritan that got us down to the 1 yard line, and basically said, can you imagine if Arch Manning made this play and how nuts ESPN would be going? Like, I'm not saying he's winning the Heisman this year. I think I would already put money on him to win the 2026 Heisman. Like, he is just playing elite, out of his mind football. Mike, walk us through what you're seeing in the stats on just how well he's playing.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I wouldn't even say that this was necessarily his best game. Yeah, look, there's certainly I think there were a lot of plays that CJ would like to have back, but look, he only turned the ball over one time. He threw for well over 300 yards, 342 yards. So anytime you're throwing for a total like that, that means you're getting a lot of productivity through the air. Um, and like so a 59% completion percentage, which is low for him, but the important thing to keep in mind is that he's throwing the ball deep on average. His average depth of throw, 15 yards. So these are riskier. These are more challenging throws. These are more impactful throws. And so we mentioned this on the show last week, um, but you have to kind of like change your perception of what is considered a good completion percentage, depending on how deep your quarterback is throwing. And CJ is throwing very, very deep. So in this case, look, I think that's a solid completion percentage. He overall graded out really well again. 80 on a 80.6 on Pro Football Focus grade, which is effectively an elite grade. So even I think I saw it was one of the I forgot which beat reporter it was, but they were replying to someone who was criticizing just some random person on Twitter who's criticizing CJ Carr's play, and the response was basically like, the question is not how good your good is. Everyone's good is good. The question is how good is your bad game. The answer for CJ Carr is his bad is pretty damn good, and that's what we continue to see. The one area he was a little weaker in was under pressure, but it's not like he was under pressure that much this game. So he's under pressure nearly 18% of dropbacks. He got sacked twice. He was 4 for 2, one interception. But then he also the two throws that he completed were for 45 yards. So look, I think it's one area that obviously he can improve on. He is inexperienced, but the one area that
it's still 11 yards per attempt when
yeah.
under pressure. Like 11 yards per attempt when you're under pressure is like darn good day at the office.
And look, that interception, I can live with that interception. It was a fourth down, and I mean, like he was either gonna
just to be clear, it was pass interference. The refs can call it what they want. That was pass interference.
Right. But to me, it's like it's fourth down. He was either going to get run out of bounds or sacked. You might as well just throw it up, right? Like to me, that's not like it's not the same as like like an interception where you're on your own 35-yard line and you just, don't see a safety or something like that. Totally, totally different scenario. But like, I'd say the one thing that just kind of that alleviates my concerns about him, not grading out as well under pressure is he's extremely effective against the blitz. You look at the stats for when he's blitzed versus not blitzed, grades out extremely high when he's blitzed, and then nearly a 90 when he's kept clean. So basically, for opposing defenses, it's if you're gonna blitz him, you better hope that you get pressure, because if you don't, he's probably gonna throw a touchdown.
Right. So time for today's film review. To dig into some of those blitzes. So he had, I believe, 3 completions. Yeah, he had 3 completions on blitzes, and 2 of them went for touchdowns. All 3 of them went for first downs. And I've got the film on each one of these. I'm going to play them here in sequence. The first, a pass completion to Malachi Fields, and then the next 2, the touchdowns to KK Smith and Will Pauling over the middle. In each of these here, great blocking by the running back. I want you to watch Jadarian Price here in this first film pick up the blitz. Doesn't look the prettiest, but he gets the job done. Pass complete, Malachi Fields. Second clip, Jadarian Price lays wood and knocks the guy over, leads to an easy pitch and catch. And then same thing here in this third highlight, Jeremiah Love picks up the blitz, big time block, keeps the pocket clean. When running backs do that on blitzes, they correctly identify where the blitz is coming from. That's step number 1, right? This isn't all just running backs. This is CJ Carr saying, hey, I'm identifying the blitz. We're pointing it out. We're getting our pre-snap protection in place. And then the running back executes that. So we get the, blocking scheme correct from where the blitz pressure is coming from. We pick up the blitz and you keep a pocket clean. And now you're giving man-on-man coverage with no safety help. that's just such a huge advantage for CJ Carr. So I think it's worth calling out the little things, right? We can all say, oh, the offensive line blocked well. We can say, oh, CJ Carr executed well and stayed calm against the blitz. These plays turned into layups because Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love did their job blocking. I still remain shocked that they couldn't stay on the field last year in third down situations because we said Anais Williams is just such a better pass blocker. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price grading out very, very well on these three plays, turning what could be pressures, don't always go so well, into easy, clean pocket layups for CJ Carr. Three plays I thought really defined this game. It was two of our touchdowns to break open the lead. Big moments in this ball game from the running back room.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, Brett, this is last year we weren't even putting these guys in on a lot of third downs because their pass blocking wasn't holding up. So this is an area they've both of them have improved tremendously. And as a running back, when you're pass blocking, it's not like you have to stone them. It's really just you have to identify the pass rusher, and then a lot of times it's putting your body in the way and just doing enough to not allow that pass rusher to disrupt the play. Kyron Williams is someone who comes to mind. Not the biggest guy, but he was someone who was a pretty effective pass blocker because he would identify the pass rush and he was very willing to put his body on the line. One of these clips, one of the clips with Jadarian Price, look, it wasn't the cleanest block in the world, but he did enough to hold up the pass rush and he gave CJ Carr enough time to make a play. And so that's exactly what you want to do. And that's exactly what you want to see. Now, Brett, I'm going to turn it back over to you on the running backs and the run game more broadly. I would say fair to say not our best day in the office for the run game. Curious to get your thoughts, on that.
Yeah, it's not great. And again, we're averaging, what was it here? 4 or 5 yards a carry, 4.5 yards a carry out of Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, both around the same number. I start thinking this is the opposite of where we were a couple years ago when the outside run game was just so effective. And we just kept saying, like, get the running back to the outside. I can't remember if it was Kyron Williams or Audric Estime. I think it might have been Estime season. And we just kept saying, like, get those guys to the outside, and they're so dynamic. And we're almost stubbornly, Brian Kelly hitting his head against a brick wall, just keep running it up the middle for less yardage. This feels like, and now we've got some data behind this feels like Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love just keep trying to bounce it to the outside every single time for home runs instead of just taking the 3-4 yards that's available up the middle. And we got some stats to prove that out. Jeremiah Love in this game had 8 carries to the tackles or outside end that went for 41 yards. So about 5 yards a carry. One of those went for 24 yards. Awesome. He popped one. That's great. But the other 7 carries went for about 2 yards per carry. And only one of those 8 in total, the 24-yarder I talked about, that was the only one that went for 10 plus yards. Not the most productive, pretty low success rate, not good at staying on schedule, and it's a lot of 0, 1, and 2 yard gains. Similarly, Jadarian Price averaged 7 yards per carry on runs up the middle and just 1.4 yards per carry on runs to the outside. So it just feels like we're trying to do too much running the ball, and especially against loaded boxes of 7, 8 guys, if there's 3 yards there, you got to take it. Like every time you bounce it to the outside, that 3-4 yard play isn't always turning into the 20-yard home run. And I get how athletic they are. This is not to say they should never bounce it to the outside. But if they have 4 yards available, take it. Just like take the moderate gain. And right now it feels like we're so intent on, unless if there's a wide open hole up the middle, we're bouncing it to the outside to hit a home run. And I'd like to see a little more patience. And even if it's not a home run up the middle every time, be a little more balanced, be a little more patient, just take what the defense gives you. I think we've got to figure out how to coach that up. I don't know if it's going to happen between now and USC. That feels like something that gets caught in self-study, looking at our own film over a bye week. But I think there's an adjustment to be made there because we're way too productive up the middle relative to the outside run to not try to balance those here a little bit better.
Yeah, look, it's very correctable. I think it makes sense that Price and Love, they're home run hitters. So their instinct is, I'm going to try to get a home run. I think this is on the coaching staff to try to get them to, as you said, Brett, take more of these runs up the middle, take more of these guaranteed 4 or 5 yarders. I think, I think this game we were skewing too much towards those outside runs, which is funny. Yeah, as you mentioned, the opposite of what we were talking about a few years ago. Also, not the best. I would say not the best run blocking for our offensive line this game. They didn't grade out well. Now, look, you always have to take these Pro Football Focus grades with a grain of salt, but there were many instances of the NC State defensive line being very disruptive, and I mean, there were many plays you look back on where just the offensive line missed a block, which would cause the play to get blown up. So you combine that, then you combine us, trying to hit too many home runs. That's where you have not as effective a day in the office for the run game. And look, it's still not a terrible day in the office. It's just the standard is so high for this run game. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. We also had Ashton Craig, our center, went down. So you have a little bit of disruption on the offensive line too. It sounds like he's out for the year, which is unfortunate because he was starting to elevate his play, and someone who has a lot of potential when he can stay healthy. So hopefully he recovers quickly, but it looks like unfortunately we won't have him for the rest of the year. And then I guess just
to be clear, we are split. I want to be clear. We're splitting hairs here, right? Like This is the number 4 offense in SP plus. If I want to split hairs a little further, so some of that's run game. I think some of this might start being play calling a little bit. We talked about this last week of trying to run into boxes of 7 and 8 guys versus count the hats. And if there's 7, 8 guys in the box, you have to trust your offense and pass the ball. And if there's 6 guys in the box, why are we ever throwing it and should just be running all day long? That's happening here again in this game where if you remove sacks, which hurts pass yards, if you account for sacks as hurting your passing game and you remove QB kneels, which just kind of artificially hurts your run game. So we're actually adjusting passing yards per drop back down and adjusting rushes per carry up. We had 9.5 yards per dropback. We had 4.6 yards per carry. We were twice as effective on designed passes than we were on designed runs. Twice as effective. And we were 50-50 pass run ratio. This is not to say we should go air raid. This is not to say we should never run the ball. This is not to say Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price should not be getting more touches than anyone else in the offense. But should you push that to 60-40? If they're putting 9 guys in the box on 4th and 2, 4th and 3, should we try spreading it out and not do I get the play action, rollout, pass, bootleg, whatever, but that's still kind of off the run set. Can we just go throw the ball? Can we just run 4 standard routes, let them stay in the pocket, dissect the defense, and not have a one route try to fool them, sprint right to one guy? It just feels like CJ Carr is playing at a level to open up the playbook that if the passing game is going to be twice as productive as the running game, I'm not sure 50-50 balance is the right tendency anymore.
Yeah, which tells you a lot about CJ Carr, just given how dominant our run game usually is. And so, yeah, I mean, look, these are all, Brett, as you mentioned, these are all tweaks. These are little criticisms. These are enhancements. It's like if you tweak that percentage to where you pass a little bit more, you tweak that percent where you're running the ball inside a little bit more. These seem like opportunities where we can just become a more consistent offense. We could have a higher success rate, and it could just open things up more generally for our offense. Now, I guess the last thing I'll touch on is for the offensive line, how we fared in the in the pass blocking game. And I would say, look, it was fine. Not stellar. I mean, I would say anytime you allow a pressure rate that is lower than the blitz rate, which we did, then that's a good day in the office. We gave up a couple sacks, but Brett, as you mentioned, as we both continuously mentioned, the sack statistic is a little bit overrated at times. So I think whereas with the run blocking, it was a shaky performance from the offensive line. The pass blocking was fine. And again, NC State's not a dominant defense, but this is what you want to continue to see because there's an area where we struggled quite a bit against Miami. So it seems like moving forward, the pass blocking is something that we can hopefully rely on more. And it also helps, tying it back to an earlier point, it helps when your running backs and other players on the field, not on the offensive line, are also making an effort to be good pass blockers.
Absolutely, absolutely. One last closing thought on coaching. I've seen a lot of stuff now on we don't have Riley Leonard, so we're just not as good in fourth yardage situations. Let's start kicking more field goals. Stop it. That's just silly logic. Pete Sampson, I love you. I'm looking at you at the Athletic. Stop it. We're talking about 4 for 9 on fourth downs. That's a sample size of 2 plays, would be 6 for 9, and we'd go from, below average fourth down to best in the country. It's 2 plays. Like, that doesn't mean stop your entire strategy. And I'm telling you right now, if we start kicking short field goals against USC and against playoff teams, we ain't winning. Like, you got to go put points on the board. You got to roll the dice. Fourth and short, you got to be going for it. You got to stay aggressive. Look at Dave Doran in this game. They were down by 10 points and had 4th and 2 at their own 40 and punted. We march right back down the field and make it a 17-point game. So now they're down 17. And on the next drive at the same exact location, they had to go for it on 4th and 11 and threw an interception. You're telling me they didn't want that 4th and 2, or maybe it wasn't 4th and 2, it was 4th and 4. They didn't want that 4th and 4 back. Like, you have to stay aggressive in modern college football to go put points on the board and trust your defense. I love what Freeman's doing coaching. I love the strategy. I love the aggressive fake punts. I love the Tyler Buckner looks. Like, there's so much to like there. I don't want to get caught up in, well, we don't have Riley Leonard, so short yardage doesn't work anymore. It's sample size. It's going to correct itself. Denbrock's got more opportunity to figure it out. It's going to regress to the mean. And I sure hope it regresses to the mean and we go 3 for 3 on fourth downs against USC.
Look, yeah, we have a lot of weapons on offense. So small sample size, law of averages. That'll be my big reminder. Law of averages. I'll tie it back to what we were saying about Chris Ash the first couple games. It's like, let's just hold a minute. We have a very limited sample set, and look what happened with the defense. Look what's happening with the defense. And I think the same holds true. It's different side of the ball, different scenario, different statistic, but I think that same logic holds true here on these short yardage conversions. I think as we progress, it's something that we're going to get better at. And look, I think part of it is also the coaching staff is just kind of figuring out, like Riley Leonard was honestly a cheat code last year in these scenarios. I think we're just figuring out with our offense what is going to be the most effective way to handle these things. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of great players, a lot of talent. There's no reason that we won't figure it out, and I would expect us to figure it out sooner rather than later.
All right, with that, that's a wrap on the NC State recap. We have a big upgrade surprise to the show. We are going to unveil that on our next episode to get everyone hyped for rivalry week against USC. Yes, that's some suspenseful short foreshadowing. So tune in for the USC preview. We'll be back here in a couple days with that show. Until then, Gyrish beat Trojans.
Gyrish beat Trojans.